Today, I want to talk about engaging with ideas, which is also an extension of the conversation that I've been having on this channel for the last 2 days. But before I do that, I want to talk about one thing I'm going to try and improve over the next little period. I think that I've done a pretty good job of trying to remove filler words from my vocabulary. It's not perfect, but I've definitely reduced it by 90%, if not more. The next step, I think, is going to be about removing my lack of eye contact. One thing I noticed in the video yesterday was that I did a lot of looking around, looking at the sky, just to try and formulate my thoughts, which I think is another form of filler word. What I'm trying to do is to practice talking on camera in a way that is clearer for me when I have to edit myself. And looking away from the camera is probably going to be a detriment in the future. So that's the thing that I might start integrating into my videos. Not to say that I'm going to try to not look away from the camera entirely, because I think it's pretty natural to not look at the camera, but I think I should be spending most of my time looking at the camera. So that's just an asterisk for anyone at home who is trying to monitor how well I'm progressing. So we might go back to being a little bit stilted, but it's all baby steps, and I hope that you can then see me improve as I go. So that was all just a flag to tell you how I'm improving. Okay, so outside of that, I want to talk about engaging with ideas, which is something that is an extension of the conversation I've been having over the last few days. The reason I want to do this is I realized that I think that I have been missing a more fundamental part of this whole building mental models and being well informed. And that is the difference between being fed ideas and engaging with ideas yourself. Recently, I've been reading this book, Economics, a User's Guide, as a part of a challenge to myself to do what I'm calling going back to university, which effectively is just me reading all the books that I was supposed to read at university or before university, but never ended up reading and just pretending that I had read. I think I really do enjoy the subject I went to university for, which is politics, philosophy, and economics. But at the time, I was going through mental health issues and a bunch of other stuff, and basically just did the minimal amount of work that I needed in order to pass. And now, with more free time and, well, actually, probably less free time, but more willingness to engage in the ideas at my own pace, I'm really excited to relearn my degree in a way that gives me a better appreciation. The way I'm actually thinking about it is the first time I was skimming the book just to get a sense of the entire degree and the knowledge base that I want to learn about, and now I can go through it more assuredly, knowing what I'm trying to learn. All of that to say, I've been reading this book, Economics, a User's Guide, which is a broad overview of economics. And I think one way to read this book is to have the ideas of the book fed to me and take them as a given. But I think engaging with those ideas is really important in your ability to actually know the thing. And then not only know the thing, but extend it to understanding the thing. And that's sort of the difference between knowledge and understanding, I think. So how do you do this? I think one thing about engaging with ideas is that you have to be able to apply those ideas to your life or concepts that you have heard independently. So if you learn something about economics, you should be able to read the news and try to understand the news through the idea that you have learned. That's what I think takes it from being fed an idea all the way to engaging with it critically, and actually being able to apply it is sort of the first step in that. I think the other thing that could be considered engaging with ideas that's a little bit harder is coming up with ideas yourself, and coming up with ideas based on the knowledge that you have, and coming up with theories that you can then test or search for academic backing. And I think part of that is an academic curiosity, or not even an academic curiosity, a curiosity, but the way I like to think about it is, in a way, it's also street smarts. I think that coming up with your own theories about how the world works or how different industries work or whatever that you are interested in learning about is street smarts, because you are not waiting for the data to catch up. You are forming opinions based on your understanding of the world and building your own mental model around it. The other way that you can do this, that isn't as extreme as coming up with your own new and novel ideas, is to expand upon the ideas that have been fed to you after applying them. And if you want to engage more with the ideas that you have learnt, you can try to extend those ideas into more contemporary world. So if there's an idea that is from hundreds of years ago, like, for example, liberalism, neoliberalism, Marxism, whatever it is, you can try and apply them in contemporary issues that haven't quite yet been applied in the modern day. This is sort of the work that you get to do if you do a humanities or political science degree. It's about taking these theoretical frameworks, or mental models as I've been calling them, and applying them to new areas of research. I think the other part of this would be to try and disprove or correct small areas of understanding that you have yourself or a theory is bringing, and try to modify it yourself in order to improve those ideas. I think these are all ways to engage with ideas in a way that isn't just passively consuming an idea and adopting it as your own. I think it's really easy, particularly in the way that media is going, to have pundits feed you your talking points. And I don't mean this in like a conspiratorial way or a way where everyone's part of an army and are looking for their marching orders. I think this is just a natural way to be when it's all very complicated or overwhelming, and this is the easiest way. And I think people are inherently lazy, but not in a judgmental way. I think it's just easy to take the easiest path, and I think that's totally fine. It's kind of a adaptation or survival mechanism. We learn the most efficient way to do something, and sometimes that means just taking marching orders from people that you trust in terms of your ideas. But as we consume more media and ideas passively, I think that our default mode is becoming increasingly entrenched in just being fed ideas and adopting them as our own, rather than engaging in ideas ourselves. And one thing that I've learned from Economics, a User's Guide, and I'm only a couple chapters in, is that one thing that's happened in economics is that the way economics is taught, particularly my experience of economics, and from this book it seems a lot of the modern world's experience of economics, is that there is one prevailing economic set of ideas that are really at the forefront of economic teaching at university and in academia more broadly, called neoliberalism. And that is causing issues when that model is not able to expand and adapt itself to the challenges of the world today. And so that's sort of an interesting thing that I've picked up from the book, which connects to the ideas of the last few days, which is super interesting because when I started talking about those ideas a couple of days ago, I wasn't reading the book, but the things that I'm thinking about are coming up in different areas of reading as I do them. And that is an interesting way to absorb ideas into my mental model. The one thing I found interesting about Hajun Chang, the author of this book, is that in an interview, he was talking about how to a hammer, everything's a nail. And sure, that's great if the hammer finds a nail, but if the hammer finds something else like jelly or an egg, it can be ineffectual or disastrous. And I think this is the importance of really being skeptical of your own mental models or theoretical frameworks, because if you get convinced that your ideas are rock solid and you aren't open to changing them, particularly changing them to views that might be difficult for you to adopt because they previously were criticizing your way of thinking about things, you can really start to entrench yourself in wrong ways of thinking. And I think that's really dangerous. And I say this outside of politics. Obviously, politics is sort of the easiest frame to think about these ideas. But particularly as someone who, not to be a hustle bro about it, runs a business, always having to adapt your mental model of how things should run in the business is a really important way to continue to have a business that survives. Some of the biggest examples of businesses that fail is by finding a business model that works and then not being able to adapt to changing times. So having a ability to be flexible to different challenges and different economic environments is really important when trying to run a business. So I think this is important in all areas of your life. And it's also why I think that when you get older, you have certain ways that you just think are the best way of doing things. And I think over time, you just close yourself off to different ideas because you realize that I'm old, I have experience, I know these things work, and that's how you can become a bit more boomerish. And I think that just happens over time, but I think we should try and resist that if we can. So that's my thoughts.